Cherry red needs bumpers, and mostly because I want to give it a nice paint job, and so I want to have a little bit of chrome on it and make it look classy. That'll be their only function. They won't bump anything. I've got bumpers for it that came with the car, other ones that I scrounged when I took apart some other cars, but in the end I just ordered them from the States. Made in Taiwan, fresh steel, fresh chrome, $435 US I think it is. Actually for cheaper than what it would have cost me to get the other ones re-chromed. So the big question now, how to mount them when we've got the Cadillac chassis, okay, and the unibody Cadillac was designed, those cars, the newer cars are designed with the crush factor for safety. The old cars were designed with a bumper to protect the body when you banged into things, which apparently happened a lot. Looking at some of the bumpers around here, there's nothing to hook them to except the body. Yeah, because the Cadillac doesn't have a frame. So we're going to find enough spots that we can hook them to, and then we got to figure out how to do that. Here's the deal. We need to know if we can weld these bumper supports. I've got all the bumper supports from old cars. I've got the right ones for the car, for the 49 Chev. And I need to know if I can weld them and expect them to hold like that, or am I going to have to bolt them? Reason being is that the original bumper supports are made out of spring steel. Okay, you could tell if it's spring steel or just mild steel by the sparks that come off the grinding disc as you cut or grind them. See the difference? Here's the spring steel and here's the regular mild steel. So problem being is that when you weld, the mild steel welding process onto some spring steel, it might not be that strong. It would just break off. So the fact is that these bumper supports originally are riveted together. They're not welded to anything. They're riveted together and then bolted to the frame. And we might have to do something like that. Weld some mild steel bar to the underside of the car body and then drill holes and bolt these spring steel bumper supports onto them. The trick to drilling spring steel is you've got to have a sharp bit and a really slow rotation. So this little drill press won't do it. It rotates way too fast. It's on the very slowest speed and it's still way too fast. So I'm going to use my cordless drill on the low speed. And the other thing, you don't want to try to drill smaller hole, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. You probably need a small pilot hole to start with because it's really hard to drill from zero with these big guys. Slow rotation, lots of oil. Don't let the bit heat up. Stop every few seconds. And it'll actually drill quite quickly. Then the other thing you need to learn, if you haven't, is how to sharpen a drill bit. It's really quite easy. And it just saves a lot of time if you're using a sharp drill bit. Let me just sharpen this a little bit on the bench grinder and I'll show you what I mean. So you push against the grinder and rotate it up like that. And that'll give you this slightly over 90 degrees angle on the end of your bit there. Hard to focus, but there you go. Okay, slightly over 90 on both sides. So we'll just do a little welding test here and make sure that the spring steel can hold up. To know if we need to bolt or weld. First time I didn't grind the mild steel and it didn't penetrate. But there's a good lesson for a welder. Always clean your work, have a fresh ground surface. So when I ground it up properly, and welded the spring steel, I think it held up pretty good. The actual break is more in the weld as it is in the penetration of the steel. So welding is an option. So some of it might be bolted, some of it might be welded. Yeah, we'll just take it piece by piece. So to bend this spring steel, you can put it in a vise, pry on it, it's not gonna move. You can pound on it, and it's just gonna keep jumping back, springing back. So the plan is to make a kind of a jig that will go in my 30-ton press, my home-built 30-ton press. It's just a 30-ton jack, right? And a frame that holds it from going anywhere. I'm gonna use this square tubing, right? And then drop this piece of bumper into it. And then use this thing here up under there to push down, well, to stay stationary, and the jack will push the other part up. So let's try that, see how that works. Tons of pressure, pushing this box up around this, whatever it is, die of some kind. And that should force that down into the hole there until we get the right angle. And that's how we'll make it fit nice underneath the car. Needed 2-inch wide pieces, one on each side underneath, to go up on the little cross member. It's actually a body cross member because there's no frame. And I needed to curve it. So typically you would cut this out of plate, but I don't have any plate. So I got a 2-inch piece of flat and I put a curve in it with my 30-ton press. Every 2 inches, just give it a little hump and got the right curve in it, made a cardboard template. And so I've got 2 of these now, and I'll cut them out to go kind of around the exhaust, muffler, whatever it is, mounts, and some of those kind of things. Then we drill them through into that little cross member. Now that cross member is only like, what, 18 gauge or something like that? So it's not very heavy, but we'll go right through it. So there's a top and a bottom. We'll need 2-inch bolts to go through. And yeah, then we'll weld the bumper braces onto these. It looks like so far, these bumper mounts here, each side of the car has one of these now. And the bumper wraps around, connects in 3 places on each corner of the car, rear bumper. But here's the issue. This here ties the whole thing up to the little cross member. It's a body cross member at the back of the trunk. And what happens then is the bumper will sit on here, but this thing here is almost a straight line. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure if somebody steps on the bumper. So what I'm going to do is put a couple of, from kind of this strong point here, an arm on each side going forward about 2 feet. That'll give it stability and keep it from rocking. So here's the 2 arms in the making. And I'm actually gonna, so I've got a flange here that bolts to the bar, to the arm, and I'm gonna weld that to the bumper part and then bolt these on later, because I can't put the whole thing together and slide it into the car because it's pretty gnarly, right? It's got to go through all the holes in the body and underneath the body and around the mufflers and stuff. So the bumper bolts, if you buy them online, they come in sets of 5, I think it is, and they're like, you know, $35 for 5 bolts. Problem is the bumper needs 6 bolts. So for a car, you're gonna buy 3 sets, right? That's $100 and some bucks. So I found these in just regular bolt shop. They're just regular, what do you call them? Carriage bolts, right? Well, all of these all got all kinds of bolts for across the back, the cross member ones, the ones that are going to hold those forward arms, enough bolts for all of the front and back, for all of the parts, for like $35. Another thing worth mentioning is I like to use stainless bolts and nuts where I can. Now, they're not as strong, they're a bit brittle, they won't take the weight and the force that a regular grade 8 bolt would take, but that 28 Dodge, for example, I rebuilt it back in the 80s, must have been, at one point. And I put all stainless steel bolts in the undercarriage, holding the fenders on and everything. Well, now you can just go in there and take them off and on. My 42 Chev's the same thing, it's all stainless steel. And they don't rust, right, don't corrode. So you can always get them off easily, especially if it's a vehicle you're going to keep for a long time and you're probably going to be doing some adjustments or modifications or whatever. Stainless steel bolts are the way to go. They look really nice too. So the bumpers on my 29 Dodge, the corner bolts, the bolts on the end of each bumper, they were just a stainless steel bolt, like 6 inches or whatever, to go through the entire bumper. And then I ground the heads round and polished them up. And so, yeah, they look really nice. So for these bumper bolts that I just bought, I am going to maybe sand the tops a bit just to give it fresh steel. They're zinc coated, right? And then I'll take them with me to Thailand and get them chrome plated. It'll cost me pennies each to get these actually chrome plated. And so that's what I'll do so that they'll match the bumper well. The next trick was these bumper rubber mount things that go onto, you can see the bumper braces will fit right through there. Well, they do sell them, but I figured I would just buy a hunk of rubber, right? That would just, turns out it's about the same size. I think it's 3-inch rubber or whatever. And cut it on the bandsaw, same thickness. And made a couple of those and then just, yeah, bandsawed the curve on there. Drilled it with a drill press to copy this, follow this, and these will slip onto the nicely polished bumper braces. Okay, so I just sanded these with like 80 grit flap disc or whatever. So that goes this way. I'm guessing this curve goes to the front. I don't know, so it goes on like so. Look at that, fits right on there. Now, I thought that maybe this thing would fit into the body opening on the back part of the fender, but it's too tall, so it doesn't. So I don't know, maybe it just kind of like sits there just for fun. Maybe it stops the mud from going through. I don't know, it doesn't fill that whole body hole though. Anyway, maybe somebody knows. Send me a comment and say, no, that goes here, that goes there, that's what this is for. Because at this point it looks like it has no purpose. But then my car is anything but stock. Front bumper mounts are going to be much easier than the back ones because I don't have to work my way around all of the odd shapes in the rear end. The front, I'm going to just drop a couple of pieces down, straight down from the frame that I put on there already to hold the front of the car together. So basically, it's simple. Lay the bumper out, clean up the bumper mounts, a right side and a left side, and make a little flange that I'm going to weld them to, and then bolt them into the bumper, and then I'll know exactly. All right, I got them tacked in place from the bumper mounts to the frame. And I expected the front bumper was going to be easy. I told you that. It wasn't. Well, the problem was that because there's nothing standard on this car anymore, I actually couldn't tell which bumper bracket mounts were the front or the back. I think I used front ones on the back, because then when I went to put this front bumper on, I used the other ones, and I went to put it on, and it turns out, oh, those are from the back. They're not even going to work. So after I ground them and got them all bolted and bent and everything into place, I had to throw them away. And now I've got the proper front mounts on there. And so it's going to work a lot better because it clears the front wheel and stuff like that. So now we're just going to call her quits there, except I'll pull this bumper off and then finish welding the bumper mount to the frame. It'll nicely bolt and unbolt. I can still get the splash pan off, the dash off, everything's going to come off and on nicely. And then I'm going to put the bumpers away in the box until I get the car painted. Yeah, so what have we learned? Well, man, you just can't be careful enough comparing things before you start cutting and welding and assuming, I guess I should have laid out the front bumper mounts and the front bumper, the back bumper mounts and the back bumper all on the floor to start with, and then look at what I had. And I got a ton of extra mounts that I pulled off of other old cars, so I'm not running out of stuff. But it just took me, I would say an extra day probably, which is too bad because the days are really hard to find, I tell you what. And it's just about time that I wrap this up and put it away and went back to work overseas. And I'm excited about that too. It's nice to get back sort of where I belong, on the other side of the world. At some point, a lot of people there waiting for us, and looking forward to a good fall and a good winter. But I am going to sneak back here in November, end of November, when there's going to be like 3 feet of snow on the ground, and nobody's going to know where I am, and I'm going to actually get to work on this car. And then it's just a matter of final straightening up the body filler, primer, paint, then clear coat, all that work. That's a lot of work. And then we start putting in the windows and the rubbers and the regulators for the window winders and all that kind of stuff. And then the interior. It's going to be a lot of fun once we get to the clean. I'm so tired of being dirty. Just tired of it.